Hey guys, what's going on? Another one here at Sage Labs. So ever since Apple's come out with their Apple Vision Pro, there's been so many buzzwords lately and so many people have been talking about mixed reality, augmented reality, spatial computing, and I was just kind of wondering, like, what does that really even mean, right? What is spatial computing and what is it supposed to give us as a people that our smartphones, tablets, laptops, and our desktops don't already give us? Why would we want to start switching to the spatial concept when everything already works perfectly fine? So I thought I'd decide to look at what the competition has to offer too and see what the more Android or PC side of the equation has to offer when it comes to spatial computing. So with the Meta Quest 3 here probably being the closest competitor to the Apple Vision Pro, I thought it would be fair to take a look at this guy and see what kind of capabilities it has and see if it can spatially compute for the masses, for Android users, for PC users, or even for Apple users that don't want to spend $3,500 on a base level headset when you can get a competent experience for literally a fraction of the price. So we're going to be going through and kind of just looking at how the headset performs, and I'm not really going to be talking about raw straight specs of the headset because there's just so many videos and articles out there that you can already look at to just see a breakdown list of resolution, frame rate, all those kinds of things. If you're interested in that, there's plenty of sources out there to look at. This is going to be more of just like the general experience of the headset, maybe how it compares to the previous generation, and just how the general state of VR lays out today, and why I personally think that for this thing, the VR could be considered more of an afterthought, and maybe this whole AR thing is what it actually takes to save the concept of VR, and that could maybe be what gets this whole mixed reality concept launched out finally. So first, taking a look at the headset compared to the last generation, right away there are some immediate physical differences. We've got obviously way more camera arrays on the front, with on the second generation we only have 2 cameras on the bottom, 2 cameras on the top, and now with the third generation we have a double camera here, a double camera here, a depth sensor in the middle, and still 2 cameras down at the bottom, bringing us to 6 cameras and a depth sensor combined to give you more accurate tracking, better depth mapping of your floor for a boundary, or for just general pass-through quality. You're also going to get better hand tracking on the Quest 3 versus the Quest 2, so you'll be able to more appropriately or naturally move your windows around. So you can actually pinch your window, move it around into a different space, resize if you need to, actually touch the window in real time in front of you as it sits there. All these you can do without the controller, versus on the second generation you can do the point and pinch to click at something, or you can use the controller to move things around and touch at things, but you can't just grab it and move it around as if it were actually there like you can on the third generation. It kind of adds more to that, bringing both the real world and the digital world together in a natural, appropriate feeling way. With the third generation, the ability to just touch at things and poke at things and resize things and move them around without ever once picking up a controller. You can completely navigate your entire way around the the Meta Quest 3. You can completely navigate the entire headset without ever once picking up a controller. You can move things around, resize, like I said, do everything you'd ever want to on the headset without touching a wand. Obviously, games are a completely different story, but when it comes to just having a big web browser in front of you, sending off a message, watching a video, all this can be done literally just with the headset, no wands required. And speaking of all those things, I'm honestly starting to get convinced that the general computing experience of this device, the third generation, is very comparable and similar to that of a Chromebook. And I don't necessarily say that as a bad thing. You can sideload Android apps on it. Like I said, you can access the internet on it. You can do all the lightweight general computing experience that you would expect out of a Chromebook or a lighter weight notebook kind of device, or maybe even a iPad Pro kind of workflow. But you're not going to be editing a video directly off the headset, as you can't get any of those types of apps. You're not going to be encoding video straight off of it, or you're not going to be rendering, high-end edits or anything like that. What you can do is you can obviously take it and connect it to your desktop. So you can do like a remote display, get your desktop window floating in front of you, something that would be significantly larger than your real monitor if you wanted to, or having a second, third, maybe even a fourth screen sitting up there. Now this is all dependent on what type of application you want to use, because there's so many different apps available for this headset. There are 1,001 different ways to do the same thing. So it's purely personal preference on if you want to use remote desktop, or if you want to use immersed, or one of the hundreds of different apps that would effectively let you do a remote desktop connection. You also have the ability to plug it in wired via Quest Link. As long as you have a Type-C cable to plug into the headset, plug into your computer, you can get a wired connection for better quality in your games. If you don't want any kind of input delay, it's really, really nice for just a solid portable screen, especially on the go. And I don't want to underestimate the ability to sideload Android apps on this thing is incredibly useful. So not only does it just let you do basic things, like if you wanted to, say, watch Plex, you could put Plex on it and connect to your Plex server. You could connect it to, I don't know why I'm drawing, you could load up Snapchat on it, you could put TikTok on it, you could do all your general, normal day-to-day app interactions on the headset. But it goes a little bit farther than that, because it's almost any Android app. So you could literally put, for example, the mobile version of Fortnite on here if you wanted to. I've tried it and it actually runs pretty well. You can put a huge floating screen in front of you, play your game, kick back, have a controller in your hand because it supports controller input, and have this nice big screen in front of you that you're playing your favorite game on, and still being able to see the world around you with the color pass-through is, once you've tried it, you're never going to go back kind of thing. Because, don't get me wrong, the pass-through has room to improve. It definitely has that screen door effect, and it does get a little grainy in some points, and when something gets close to your face, there's definitely like some warping. Like if you were to look over to your side and the camera catches your shoulder, it'll definitely warp your shoulder a little bit. Or if maybe an animal were to move, like one of your pets moves by or something and kind of gets close to your face for a second, there's going to be some warping there. But it is, without a doubt, past good enough. It's not perfect yet, but it's definitely usable. If you have the font larger on your phone, you can shoot off a text, read what someone sent you, you could accept a phone call off it, all the general things, find your water bottle when you're in between Beat Saber rounds, all that kind of stuff works perfectly. And it's convincing enough that once you were doing what I said earlier and have your big floating screen there, playing your favorite game, your peripheral vision, you almost even forget that you're wearing the headset. You just think that you're looking at a giant TV, because everything on the edges you kind of just forget about almost, and then you are truly immersed in there. You forget that you're wearing a headset. Maybe it feels like you're wearing a pair of goggles a little bit sometimes if you're still paying attention to it. But believe me, once you get Steam Link or PlayStation Remote Play or even Xbox Remote Play on this thing, because again, you can sideload Android apps, I'm fully convinced that you could buy this headset and never once play a VR game in it. And it would still be a perfect gaming companion to your gaming PC, to your PS5, to your Xbox, to whatever game system you play on, as long as it has some kind of remote streaming capabilities. Obviously, your connection is going to be the biggest thing, but if you have a fast enough connection, You can literally just take this guy and any room in your house, have the biggest TV you've ever played on, hold just a controller so it feels like you're playing on a console. You don't have to deal with a backbone for your phone if that's too small. You don't have to deal with carrying your laptop around. You don't have to deal with trying to find a TV to plug into. It literally just connects, you turn your controller on, and you're playing your game. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's something that you really do have to try to be convinced of, like, wow, this is incredible. So as a gaming companion, obviously it's the Android, I'll call it the Android or the PC side of it. The Apple Vision Pro is notoriously not a gaming device. I mean, people are getting some luck going on it, but obviously it is just not a gaming device. It's a productivity device. And this still has plenty of productivity uses. Like I said, you can hook it up to your computer, get another monitor there, and do anything you would normally do on your computer and see it on the headset. But the ability to just play a game right off the headset, or even just stream your favorite non-VR games, it's enough that I think you could justify this purchase just on its own. But then that starts to bring us over into the other side of the equation, right? The whole, again, VR itself. What really is the state of true virtual reality today? It's been how long since even this original PlayStation VR came out, and the games that I was playing on this headset, the 6 or 7 games that I really enjoyed on this headset, are still the same 6 or 7 games that I enjoy on this headset. And that's not necessarily the headset's fault itself, right? The technology in this thing is very, very powerful. It's got a full computer's worth of components and a battery and a display strapped to your face. And it's still got enough room in there for a full ventilation system. You can actually almost hear and feel the slightest amount of warm air coming out of the top. So there's even a moving fan in this tiny little package. The hardware itself isn't the problem. The problem is no one wants to take the risk, right? The financial risk of making the next true, real, AAA VR title. I mean, sure, we're getting some good entries now, like Azora's Wrath and the the Assassin's Creed VR, and even Resident Evil VR, which also brings me to another point that I'll talk about in a minute. But we are slowly getting more and more high-quality games for these things, but it's nowhere near at the pace of, a standard game. They don't have, like, Baldur's Gate or Helldivers quality of games coming out at a regular basis for these things. Which, again, I think is the main reason that people are looking at these a little too much like just VR headsets now, because that's not necessarily what they are. I think more like VR is a bonus, and yes, it still does it. Even the Apple Vision still does VR, but it's not really even the selling point anymore. It's more just the whole everything else that you can do with it, right? You can play your favorite games on it, watch your favorite shows on it, use a lot of your favorite programs in a virtual space, but also in your real world at the same time. That perfect harmony of the AR and the VR into that mixed reality experience that everybody keeps talking about. And I'm kind of starting to think that maybe they are onto something a little bit with this. But coming back to my point about the VR games, I don't think that it would be that much. I mean, I know from a development standpoint there are extra resources that they have to invest, and it costs extra time and money, but if more game developers were to just do what Minecraft does, what Resident Evil does, what No Man's Sky does, and you make your main base game as you already would for everybody to be able to play, but then just include that VR mode on it, right? That little button down there at the bottom that says VR if you have the headset. You can throw your headset on, now play that same game that you were already playing on a controller, but in the virtual reality. and then you can join your friends like in aforementioned games. You can all share the same experience, whether you guys have headsets or not, and it would just add to that. You have all these games that you could suddenly start playing now if they were to just add a VR mode, right? Imagine if, like I said, if Baldur's Gate or Helldivers 2 or any of your favorite current games were exactly the way they already were, but just with the VR support added on it too. There's really no downside to it from a consumer perspective. Like I said, I know that it takes extra time, extra money, extra development resources to add it, which is why not everybody can afford to do it. But honestly, I just think that if more game developers were willing to just add the VR mode to their already existing titles, rather than trying to think from scratch, okay, what can we do to make a VR game? What can we do to make a VR game? Why not just take your already good game and just put a VR mode on it? It would make these things so much more compelling to so many more people to play their favorite games that already exist, but in VR. But that was my little tangent about the current state of VR games in general. But speaking of VR games, it does also have the ability to stream a VR game. If you wanted to play something off of Steam VR, you can stream it over to the headset and wirelessly play your Steam games that are on your laptop or your PC. Whether you wanted to play The Lab or something that's more Steam exclusive, you can just stream it over to the headset, so you get the option of wired or wireless connection. And for the average game on a good connection, I think it passes. I think it's more than good enough that you can play pretty much any VR game that you would think of. The only exception would be Beat Saber. And the reason I say that is only if you're playing on higher levels, whether it be Expert or Expert Plus. There's just so much rapid motion with, swinging the controllers around and hitting the notes, that just streaming it just simply doesn't cut it, because once you start moving that fast, it either starts limiting your frame rate or it starts limiting your resolution to be able to keep up with that. And it just simply doesn't look good on Beat Saber. But playing pretty much any other title, I think it more than passes to be able to stream your game from the computer to the headset. Obviously, if you still want the best visual experience or nearly unlimited runtime without the battery dying, you'd still plug it in, but then that's dependent on your cable length and all that stuff. So it just so much easier to apply to anybody's flow, whether you are a wired person, whether you're a wireless person, whether you like to run it directly off the headset itself, if you want to do it off your computer and then just mirror the display over, whether you want to play a normal game and stream it on a giant screen. It basically really is the jack of all trades when it comes to being able to play any game in any way, anywhere, at any time. I mean, I personally think that this is a perfect gaming companion for any gamer. I wouldn't say that it's, as a standalone device, I don't know that it's worth entirely $500. I'm sorry, it might be a little higher than that, but that's, again, not necessarily the headset's fault, as it more so is just the general lack of content. But as soon as you connect it to anything else, as soon as you try to do more than just VR and, like I said, start to dabble in that mixed reality space, it is a very, very competent standalone device. It's very, very competent for lightweight computing, and it's very, very competent for playing normal games anywhere you want. But yeah, so that's basically my general thoughts on the headset. Like I said, this isn't a real straight up review of the headset, just because there's so many out there. And like I said, if you want to see the specs, the direct spec comparison from the 2 to the 3, there's so many of those out there that you can already go to look at. But this is just more like my general thoughts on having the headset for a couple months now, and how it feels coming off the second generation, and just the general state of spatial computing, virtual reality, mixed reality in general. I definitely think that there's a really bright future as long as this general path is followed, because if they were to be able to maybe take this concept continue to improve on the quality of the pass-through, continue to improve battery life, maybe make the speakers sound a little bit better. Not that there's anything wrong with the speakers. The 3D audio is very good, but they could use a little more bass. It just could sound a little crisper. But if they can continue to work on this, improve this, evolve this, and especially shrink it down, and maybe just one day, if it does just fit into a normal, imagine a normal pair of glasses that has all of this and more packed into it, I could really see this becoming eventually a mainstream. But overall, I'd say that it's definitely a fun device to use. It may not be for everybody, but if you're interested in this kind of device, if you've had one before and you enjoyed it, or you're just thinking about picking up a VR in general, I strongly suggest that you consider the Quest 3. If it's a little too expensive, because I'm not entirely convinced that the base model is at the right price point, the Quest 2 is now, I believe, half off, or maybe a little above half off. But for that value, it's still a very, very compelling headset if you want to just get in, play some VR games, and call it a day. But if you want to try the spatial computing experience, but for the masses, I'd say, this is a very, very compelling headset, and I'm very excited to see what comes next. So, thank you guys for sticking around. If you've watched the entire thing, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. If there's something you liked, let me know. If there's something you didn't like, let me know. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.